Good evening and welcome to our special evening report coverage of the flood 10 years later.
10 years ago today is a date that many in the Minot area would soon forget, the day the sirens went off.
The sound of the sirens prompted a widespread evacuation effort of the area, and many families whose homes were in the path of the floodwaters had to abandon much of their belongings. Now, when the floodwaters started to rise, the city of Minot called for help. Many answered that call from all across the country. One who answered the call, the North Dakota National Guard.
John Salling has more on what the response to how the city saw in 2011.
What started with just 30 guardsmen in May of 2011 would expand to almost 1,000 across the city. The guardsmen and women fought rising water statewide that year, the organization's second biggest mission, nearing 67,000 days of service.
If we hadn't had the National Guard, there would have been a lot of people that would have lost a lot more property. So I'm glad for our National Guard people.
The Guard helped patrol the evacuated areas for looters and walked the miles of levees on the lookout for leaks. These service members were protecting their own homes in the process, as one guardsman shared at the time.
I can't get right up to my home yet, but
this is a hometown to 2 units, so there are units that have real attachment to this fight that is going on. This isn't something that's happening halfway around the world. This is our backyard.
They provided ambulance teams, purified drinking water for residents, excavators to dig up more clay for the levees, and more.
The whole flood of emotions go through your mind. You take the mission that's in front of you today and you start planning for tomorrow's mission, and just one step at a time as far as how do we recover from something this devastating.
As things wound down, they provided support registering contractors to work in the state to help speed up recovery. The flood response was the Guard's largest in state history until 2020, fighting the coronavirus pandemic. In Minot, I'm John Salling, reporting for your news leader.
Those who lived through the flood know all too well just how it impacted the area, but we wanted to break down those stats of just how devastating it really was. Here's a closer look at those numbers. Sirens went off and floodwaters hit the city of Minot June 22nd. Throughout parts of the city, floodwater rose as high as 20 feet. That's more than 2.5 street signs high. At the peak of the crisis on June 26th, the Service River had crested more than 1,500 feet. Many homes had 3 to 4 feet of standing water on the main level, while others were completely submerged. In total, more than 4,000 homes were impacted. Floodwater did not recede for weeks later until late July. In total, the flood of 2011 caused more than $650 million worth of damage.
Now, the flood left many across the region without a home to live in. And when the floodwaters receded, they left dozens of structures behind that were basically a shell of what they once were, getting the nickname of zombie homes. Faith Hatton shows us how some residents are working to clean up the leftover damage.
8th Street Northwest is one street that has been littered with blighted homes over the past decade, but residents are continuing to take action even now to clean up reminders of the flood. The sounds of construction are nothing new to residents of 8th Street Northwest.
We've done 4 houses on 8th Street now, so 2 down there, this one, and then 1 up the hill.
After renovating blighted homes on 8th Street, the Kraft family is now renovating one into their future home.
I have seen this house for probably the last 6 years just living in the area, and I just loved the look of it. I knew it was flooded, I knew it was just sitting here untouched, and I just really wanted to get in there and rebuild it to be a family home and make it beautiful again.
Back in 2014, the home was also the meeting place for Minot residents who wanted to take action against the more than 300 blighted homes across the city. While the city of Minot is working to acquire and demolish the few remaining zombie homes, they are also affording opportunities to residents to purchase the property through the Next Door Neighbor program.
We just kind of restored it to just being more or less more lawn for us.
After he and his family returned and renovated their home, Minot resident Wolfgang Sin purchased the blighted home next door from the county in 2016 and chose to demolish it.
You know, when we saw that it was going to be auctioned off, we were kind of tired of looking at just a zombie house. We were very, very glad to have been able to do that and hopefully kind of restore the neighborhood a little bit at that point.
Since taking office in 2018, Mayor Sean Sitma has worked with city staff to acquire and demolish more than 30 of the remaining homes. Now the project is in the final countdown until completion.
It's down to the last 5 or 6 homes, stemming all the way back from 2011. And those typically fall into the scenarios that the IRS is involved or a property owner that just has own reasons for hanging onto that property.
Neighbors on 8th Street Northwest say they are glad to have those painful reminders gone.
Seeing that every day is not enjoyable, so when they're gone or when they're rebuilt and you see something new and useful, replace the bad feeling with a good feeling.
Across the city, vacant lots like these are the only remainders of zombie homes left. Sitma says the city will continue to work to acquire and demolish the remaining blighted homes into 2022. In Northwest Minot, I'm Faith Hatton reporting for your news leader.
The flood impacted everyone across the region, including those of us who work in the news and had to continue on working despite the devastating waters. I sat down with some KMOT employees, past and present, see how they handled the flood.
If you're between Burlington and Minot along the river there, he said time to get out because things are going to get worse.
During the flood, KMOT news director and anchor Nick Dreyer had been working at the station for more than 10 years. The flood not only changed his professional life, but his personal life as well.
Lives would be changed forever, and I realized at this point broadcasting became really important because we're in a life-saving mode now. Now it's our job to get information out as best we can to save lives.
Recalling being at the news desk for hours on end trying to get the important information to the viewers in the city.
I don't remember which day, if it was cresting or we were going to hit our top point, but I went on air and I didn't realize I was on air for 14 hours straight. I didn't eat. I didn't go to the bathroom. I was on air for 14 hours straight. My boss finally came in and said, "Hey Nick, you gotta get off the air and take a break."
The news team working 12-hour shifts at a time, KMOT's Corey Sayre recalled seeing his neighborhood being wiped out live on air.
I didn't actually see my house, but I saw how much water was in the neighborhood, and that got kind of hard to watch because that was kind of my first glimpse of looking at it, you know, live on TV while that was going on. So that was a weird, you know, it's not like how you would want to find out about it or how you'd like to see it.
Though not an employee at the station during 2011, reporter John Salling had grown up in the Magic City and saw his whole world change overnight.
At one point,
it was a time I grew in my faith. It was a time where I had to grow up a lot more than I had at that point. Had to mature a little quicker than I would have.
John and Corey's homes were both destroyed by the flood.
It made you just realize like what is important. I mean, yeah, it's stuff, but the people that you're with and the people that care about you, that's more important than the stuff would ever be anyway.
Shaping their lives forever.
It's always in the back of your head of like, how much stuff can I actually fit in one carload? Or how do I keep it down so that I can move myself from place to place as I need to be able to.
Closing and opening new chapters.
Even though there's a lot of tough memories, there's also a lot of connections from the flood that will never be lost, because when you go through something like this, you make that connection's unbreakable.
Looking back at the memories and knowing that they have made it past one of the worst natural disasters Minot has ever seen.
The motor flipped it upside.
And still to come on our special evening report coverage, we're going to take a look at how the Minot community is working to protect itself from future floods. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to our special look back on the 2011 flood.
We're now going to go to our meteorologist, Henry Blakes, who's going to tell us a little bit about the science behind all that happened in the winter and spring of 2011 that led to that flood. Henry?
Hey, thank you, Joe, and thank you, Faith. Yes, that was quite a devastating time for not only the Magic City, but much of north central North Dakota, even Canada. And pretty much what happened was there was just so much rain during the month of May as well as June. Some of that water that was coming from Canada, most of it came down our way. And as a result of all that heavy rain in southern Canada in May and June, some of their dams in Canada started to overflow, and that water always has to go somewhere. That impacted us during May of 2011. We had just under 5 inches of rain during May, 4.97 inches, so that put us well over 2 inches above normal. One thing I'd like to show you, had to do a little bit of digging, but notice for the state of North Dakota, you see this number 106 and the number 117. Well, that lets us know that when you subtract that 106 from the 117, that means we get 11. So that was the 11th wettest May on record for the entire state of North Dakota. It was downright wet in June as well, making it the 22nd wettest June on record in 2011 for the entire state of North Dakota. But as we look outside right now, things are looking good. So it's always great to see that sunny sky. Not so great to see the heat though, but for now things are calm at 86 degrees. Record highs not likely for tomorrow, but we may see some across far southern North Dakota, but still we will be likely topping out in the mid 90s region-wide for our Wednesday afternoon. Notice highs are going to be in the 80s the farther north you go, but still relatively hot for this time of year. Botno 81, 82 for Stanley, as well as Rugby with the nice sunny sky and light wind in Harvey at 82. Can do the same, as well as 81 for Partial. Our wind will remain light out of the west tonight, around 5 to 10 miles per hour, remaining pleasant, but watch what happens tomorrow afternoon. We start to have a frontal system push through. Not really going to impact our temperatures all that much. Quite the opposite, we are still going to be relatively hot throughout our Wednesday. But notice our lows, no 40s for tomorrow morning, but instead 50s. And then our highs are going to be in the upper 80s and possibly even some low to mid 90s across the viewing area. But we do have a few chances of a couple of showers and storms Thursday night and Friday. After that, it looks like we warm back up again by next week.
All right, thank you so much, Henry. Well, within months of the flood, authorities across the region were already working on developing a comprehensive flood protection plan to prevent another disaster.
John Salling has more on the progress.
Along the river in Minot today runs a wall to protect the city. It's just one of the projects shielding communities in and around the Magic City from another deluge. Started in 2012, the construction has been going a little further every year.
I think it's going to be a good thing. They're just taking too long to do it. The event that something would happen, we're not ready for it yet. So I hope they hurry up that process.
My biggest concern would be more the outlying regions, and what's going to be done in that respect.
The city has finished sections around the Broadway Bridge, and here in the wider area, crews are continuing projects in Burlington and Teresita Vallejo. Dan Jonason, the Minot Public Works Director, says they've finished maybe 30% of the work overall.
We've made good progress, I think. Had we had more funding, I think we could have made better progress. Projects of this magnitude take time. You look at the Grand Forks Flood Control Project, that took them over 14 years.
He estimates that it could take another 20 years to complete the Souris River projects at the current funding levels, though they are petitioning the state for more to finish earlier.
I consider myself very lucky to be involved in a project of this magnitude. Hopefully we're saving them from future disasters.
When finished, the project should protect Minot and the surrounding communities from the water levels seen during the 2011 flood. When all is said and done, the total cost is more than $1 billion. To date, about $350 million have been spent. On the riverbank, I'm John Salling, reporting for your news leader.
Now, meanwhile, check this out. Just today, Ebenezer's in Minot shared this photo of the floodwaters on their Facebook page with the caption, 10 years ago, 2011, the flood sirens rang out. We weren't sure we would ever reopen, but today we're sure happy we did. Huge thanks to all our great family of customers and staff. Well, keep it here. Still to come on our special evening report coverage, our reporter Sasha Strong tells us how the city of Minot is making use of federal funding to become more resilient and build the community up. We'll be right back.
Four years after the flood, the Department of Housing and Urban Development awarded the city of Minot nearly $75 million through the National Disaster Resiliency Program. The city is using that money to help start a number of recovery projects. Sasha Strong tells us today to improve the community.
Before submitting a proposal to Housing and Urban Development, Minot city leaders met with citizens to learn how funding through the NDR program should be spent. Housing needs were quickly identified as a priority.
Things like low-income housing, because a lot of apartments and low-income housing, some mobile home parks were damaged and destroyed in the flood.
Minot was awarded $74.3 million through the program. 5 years later, the city has invested $20 million in new affordable housing. That includes $4.75 million on the Blue on Broadway project, $5.8 on the family homeless shelter, and $3 million on what's known as the Resilient Home Buyer Program.
It's to help low and moderate income households move out of the flood areas into other areas of the city. It has to be within the city of Minot, and become home buyers.
You might not be able to see other NDR investments.
The city of Minot also used $20 million on land acquisitions in order to make room for the flood protection project. And that can buy a lot of land.
City leaders say they are proud of the work they have done with the money so far.
I think we made good progress, but there's a long time to work yet between now and 2024, the extended date when the projects have to be completed.
Out of the 13 other communities that received NDR funds, John Zakian, the city's resilience manager, says Minot has made some of the greatest progress in carrying out their vision.
We actually have funds committed for more than 80%. And with 2 years to go, that's in a really good position.
The City Hall relocation and new Center for Technical Education are also NDR projects the city is currently working on. In Minot, I'm Sasha Strong reporting for your news leader.
What's coming up this week along with our closing thoughts? We'll be right back. Our coverage of 10 years after the flood does not end tonight. We will have numerous stories throughout the rest of the week. We will be looking at the impact of the flood on our local schools and churches, along with the North Dakota State Fair. And we'll also speak with leaders from rural communities like Burlington on how they made it through the flood.
Yeah, we also want to give a shout out to some members of our crew for helping to make this newscast work. We want to thank our production crew of Corey Sayre and Paul Ronning for their photography, drone footage, and graphics to help make this work. We also want to thank our viewers for sharing their compelling stories with us over the past few weeks to put this newscast together. And also, I had a lot of viewers come up to me, Grace, over the past week or so saying, please make sure to thank all of the people across the country who came to the aid of the Minot area in the recovery of the 2011 flood. So for everybody who came to help the Minot community bounce back, we want to thank you for everything that you did.
Yes, thank you so much for that. And we are going to leave you with some sights of what the current flood protection looks like in the city of Minot. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you tonight at 10.